get to that, I want your take on the Caitlyn Clark. I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but I'm just interested because I didn't know anything about it. Again, I saw the clip on Twitter, and to me, she was the victim of a cheap shot. I don't care what was stated before the cheap shot, whether she was trash talking. The officials should deal with that when and if that needed to be dealt with at the time that those things occurred. But you don't allow a cheap shot. And I don't know what the aftermath was in regards to that. Should have been a foul.
I think what I read is they retroactively called it a flagrant one.
Okay.
Well,
like I had all sorts of people. I made a comment about it on Twitter. Can't believe that I'm delving into WNBA, my first ever WNBA post, but it was a cheap shot. And I just couldn't believe. And then I had all this backlash of, well, she was trash talking the whole game and she deserves it and all this other business.
Well, I'll tell you this. I read an article today. Who was it? Was it Bleacher Report that published it regarding, I guess I wasn't around when Michael Jordan entered the league. I saw Nick Van Exel back in the day. Do you remember Van Exel? You probably do.
Oh,
you were
yeah.
in basketball back then.
Nick the Quick.
He made a comment on Twitter in response to what happened with Caitlyn Clark. I believe it was regarding a shot he took from Gary Payton his rookie year. It sounds like maybe there was some of that with LeBron. I don't know that because I guess I didn't hone into these guys' rookie seasons. Caitlyn Clark's a little different. The sport has been changed by her to a large extent. Like those other guys, the sport was big, had been big for a long time, right? Those were the next generational guys, but they weren't as generational to the sport. So, yeah, it was a cheap shot, clearly. I saw her. I don't even know. I don't even know who the woman who took the I have no idea who she is. Okay. So, and then I saw her she wouldn't comment after the game. And then I saw her on Twitter. Again, I just saw this because an article popped up. An article that basically she responded to a thread saying, besides shooting threes, what does Caitlyn Clark even do? And I'm just like, okay, I get you're trying to get attention for yourself. Like that's the only thing I can think of. You're just trying at this point. You're just trying to build attention and say, "Look at me, right? Look at me." Was it's just a stupid comment, right? It's just a stupid comment. So, you know what? I guess it's to be expected. I know some people have been like, "Why would you go after the player that's made your sport relevant?" And I understand that take. But I also understand the human inclination of some veteran people maybe being a little resentful that she's gotten so much attention when they've put in the work and not gotten rewarded. They feel like they've not been rewarded for the work they put in. Mark, life isn't always fair. Okay. Life is not always fair. Some people are more talented than others, and Caitlyn's more talented than most of the WNBA.
Yes. Your amount of income is not directly related to how hard you work.
Right.
Sorry. Hard work should pay off and typically does pay off. That's part of the formula, but we're not paying guys on the side of the road for digging ditches just because that's the most difficult manual labor that you can find. I'm just obviously using that as a random example. That doesn't mean that they make more money because it's harder to do that physically.
I will say this, when you think about, and I'm not defending the woman who hip checked her, body slammed or whatever you want to call it, but it is amazing when you think, Mark, because as of right now, like Clark has changed the game, and you and I have had these discussions. I have no doubt that because the ratings have gone up this year for the WNBA as expected. I don't know if they've exceeded expectations, not exceeded so far. The Fever are not very good. That's the other problem for them right now. But the salaries across the league have not been impacted. That's going to be a lot. Like there's going to have to be a lot that happens before everybody starts getting paid a lot more. So I guess what I do find somewhat intriguing is the fact that you have all these players in the WNBA, and some of them like Asia Wilson, and I'm sure Angel Reese. I know Angel Reese has got tons of endorsement sponsorship money, but like a lot, I would say the vast majority of WNBA players, Mark, are living for the most part on their WNBA salary. And then if they go overseas to play in some other country during the off season, they've got that. So they're making very little in the grand scheme of things. The disparity between what most WNBA players are making versus what Caitlyn Clark is making, not necessarily salary related, because we know Caitlyn's not making very much from a salary perspective. But when you think about all her endorsements, that gap is unbelievable. And I wonder if maybe if it is somewhat about money or if it's just about attention, but that financial gap is incredible. And I don't know that have we ever seen, I'm sure we have at some point, some level of sports. Can you think of an example of in another sport where an individual was making so much compared to so, comparatively less for almost everybody else in the sport? It is a unique situation from that perspective, but that's her business. Like Buick wants to give her money and Nike, whatever, but human nature is probably to resent that. So that's the only thing I can think to explain the actions of some of these players.
I think you're on the money. I have nothing to add to that because it's a complete just cheap shot and just unacceptable, but that has to be the motivation. I just see no other motivation.